He was a legend. Judge Pavel Kardashov never lost a case. They feared him. They respected him. They hated him, especially those he sentenced to life. And there were dozens of them. May 5th. A normal day in the courtroom. A normal thing, just not for those who heard his sentence. In the dock, a member of the mafia nicknamed Lawyer. Cold, silent. But in the courtroom, there were people who were not on the list. At 16:02, three men in the uniform of the bailiff service walked down the corridor. The cameras recorded it. But the video was erased after 7 minutes. No one even realized that they were not bailiffs. They were mercenaries, with the task, kill the judge, on the spot, silently, without witnesses. They approached the door, but Kartashov suddenly came out through another passage. He did not know that he was being hunted. He simply forgot his watch in the courtroom. This mistake saved his life. They met face to face in the empty hall. One of the killers took off his mask and smiled. "Hello, Pavel Ilyich. You were good, but you crossed the wrong person." He pulled out his gun, but he didn't have time. There was a crash, a shot from above. The guard on duty on the balcony noticed something was wrong. One of the attackers fell. The second threw a smoke bomb. Kardashov ran, but he was already trapped. For 17 minutes, a real war was going on in the courthouse. People were hiding under tables. The doors were locked. The signal was jammed. When it was all over, one attacker was dead. One was detained. The rest disappeared. And then something strange began. A flash drive was found on the attacker. On it, a video file protected by a password. File name, Verdict, Part 1. When it was opened, it became clear that this was not just an assassination attempt. This was a plan, an operation. The goal was to destroy 13 people connected to the same case. The first on the list was Judge Kardashov. The next, the prosecutor, the investigator, the journalist. The ones who closed case number 74 back then. The flash drive disappeared a day later. The cameras in the archive were turned off. The protocols were erased. Kardashov was taken away under guard, but 48 hours later he was gone. No trace, no investigators, no investigation, only a note on his desk. "You thought you were judging us, but now we are judging you. 13 sentences. One has already been executed." This case never made it into the media, but we found a witness. He says he saw the judge 2 weeks later, on video, gagged, and in the background the number 2. Who is behind this? Why did the evidence disappear? And most importantly, who is next on the list? She thought she was writing an article, but in reality she was signing her own death warrant. Her name was Irina Lazarina, an investigator, tough, fearless, a loner. She wrote the article about case number 74, the only one that was published. Then she received an anonymous flash drive and a warning, "Silence is life, words are blood." She ignored it. She published everything. After the judge disappeared, she knew she was next. But instead of running away, Irina decided, if they came for me, let them have a show. She installed cameras in the apartment. She bought microphones, GPS beacons, drones. She started a live broadcast called 13 Sentences, a real investigation, and got 2 million views in 24 hours. She showed traces, video recording of Kardashov's disappearance, photo of a security guard found dead in the park with a gouged out eye and the number 3 on his chest, fragments of a secret case. Caption, "The judge was not the first. He was 0.0. On the 5th day of the broadcast, she said, "If you are following me, come. I am waiting. But keep in mind, now the whole country is watching you too." After 6 hours, the camera on the roof recorded 3 people in black suits. One was holding a suitcase. The second was holding a hammer. The third one just looked into the lens. The sound disappeared. The image froze. The broadcast was interrupted. When the police arrived, the apartment was empty. No signs of a break-in. No blood, just one piece of paper nailed to the wall with a knife. On it is a phrase written in machine font. 4. She knew more than she needed to. Now she knows silence. Who are they? Why do they need case number 74? And most importantly, What was on that flash drive that no one was supposed to see? The prosecutor is next, but as rumors say, he is already dead. Only the body has not been found. He did not open the door because he knew that there was already someone behind it and that someone had been waiting for him for too long. Prosecutor Arkady Rozhnov lived alone. Since he closed case number 74, he had changed apartments 3 times, changed his last name twice, and once faked a heart attack. He knew the case had not been forgotten. It was just lying low, like an animal about to pounce. Every night at the same time, 3:33, the phone rang. An unknown number. He picked up the phone, and all he got was breathing. But on the 7th day, he heard, "You were the 4th. The 5th one is watching." He increased security, set traps on the windows, a sniper laser under the door, covered the house with motion sensors. Inside the apartment, there was a gun under the pillow, an axe behind the bathroom door, and acid in the kettle. But on the night of May 12th, the system did not work. He woke up from silence. Too clean. Too dead. The video camera monitor showed a black screen. The electricity was cut off. The elevator did not work. The water did not flow. He took out a voice recorder and began to record. "If you can hear this, then I am dead. They do not just kill. They erase. People, stories, witnesses. I hid the data. The flash drive is in the library, in the book, Notes of a Madman, Volume 2. Make it." Crackling, footsteps behind him. He turned around, but no one. He didn't notice how his own voice disappeared. The recording ends. The next day, his apartment exploded. Gas, they said in the report. But they didn't find a body in the rubble. No blood, no tooth. Only a charred page of a book with a note in pen. "The 5th is already watching. The 6th is you." A week later, journalist Irina Lazarina received an envelope. Inside was a map with coordinates and a photo of a man declared dead 17 years ago. He was looking into the camera, and on the back of the card there was an inscription, "If you are reading this, you are already a participant. The counter has been started. You will make it, or you will die asking the question, who was first?" Irina was driving to the coordinates she had received by mail. The road took her out of town, an old highway, forgotten, like case number 74 itself. On both sides, a forest, ahead, a slanted gate with a faded sign. LPZ, access strictly prohibited. LPZ, liquidation and preventive building. Officially, there are no such buildings. She went out, took a flashlight and a map. The coordinates led to a hangar. It was empty, at first glance, until she found the floor in the far corner, filled with concrete, but with a barely noticeable seam along the edges. A false slab. Irina knocked. Dull. There was something under it. It was at that moment that a voice was heard from behind. Calm, even polite. "You made a mistake. You came alone." She turned around. A man stood in front of her. Black cloak, gray hair, a familiar face. Too familiar. She had seen him in the archives when she had studied case number 74. He had been among the victims. But now he was breathing, looking at her, alive. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I was the first. I was not killed. I was rewritten." "What does this mean?" "We had an experiment. One judge, one doctor, 2 children and me. We had to make a decision. Save one, or let 3 go. Who would disappear? We chose silence, and everything went in a circle." He took out an object that looked like a key card. He put it to the floor. The concrete hatch began to vibrate, to rise. Under it was a ladder going down, where the air smelled of dust, blood, and ammonia. "This is the archives, but not documents." He looked straight into her eyes. "This is an archive of faces, lives, those who were rewritten. And you are the next entry." At that moment, Irina's phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from an unknown person. "You see one, but there are 7 of them. One is speaking. The others have already left. Time is not on your side. The choice is yours. Leave or find out the truth. But the truth is not forgotten. It forgets you." Irina took a step forward, down, into the darkness. The screen went blank. Is this the end or the beginning of the next game? After all, someone had just opened a file labeled Case Number 74 Ghost Rewritten. He stood up to read the verdict. The courtroom froze. Judge Lapshin was known for his integrity. He wasn't afraid of the mafia. He wasn't afraid of threats. But case number 74 was different. Not a single participant survived until the end of the hearing. The prosecutor had disappeared. The main witness had hanged himself in his cell. And now the verdict. He took the gavel and said, "The defendant is found guilty." And at that moment, a sharp click. Not the click of a lock, a safety catch. In the front row, a man in a black jacket stood up abruptly. A pistol with a silencer slid out of his sleeve. "Too late, Judge," he whispered, "a shot." But no one had time to scream, because an explosive roar sounded from his left. The man was thrown back. Blood, skull fragments, the weapon flew out of his hands. The policeman standing at the exit held an M4 assault rifle. The barrel was still smoking. The same policeman who had been standing motionless for an hour and a half, as if he hadn't breathed. He stepped forward, checked the attacker's pulse, and said, "The threat has been eliminated. The target has been eliminated. There are no more living agents." A pause. The judge was shocked. "Who are you?" The policeman turned around. "The one you forgot in case number 74. He put the rifle on the floor and walked out the back door. The security cameras were turned off. His name was not on the security list or at the police station. He just showed up and left. And later a note was found under the body of the murdered killer. "You were supposed to die, but he still remembers." The next shot is not in the head, but in the past. Alexei Streltsov was a living nightmare for those who knew about the Shadow. The program, which existed on the edge of legality, kept the most dangerous agents in its shadow, whose actions were hidden even from the highest authorities. But Streltsov was one of the few who survived the many operations conceived by the Shadow. He was its living embodiment, not a person, but an instrument of power. From the moment of its creation, this program existed for only one thing: to destroy everything that threatened the interests of those who stood in the shadows, where there was no room for compromise. Streltsov never asked questions until he came across case number 74. When he realized that this was not just a case, but a real chess game in which he was just a pawn, it became clear to him that his world, the world of the Shadow, was beginning to collapse. Judge Lapshin was the last stronghold of truth, and his death meant that the game was over. For everyone. For the Shadow, for Streltsov himself, and for those who stood behind the Shadow. But on this day, when Streltsov found himself in the courtroom, he was not an ordinary policeman. His task was not just to stop the murder. It was to give Lapshin a chance to see what was hidden behind the figures who controlled this game. Streltsov knew that in the case of judges and prosecutors, there are no accidents. Everything is calculated in advance. And if Lapshin survives, if he takes case number 74 to a new level, it will be death for the Shadow. He stood motionless, his eyes following every movement. Lapshin was calm. He knew that he had pronounced the right sentence, and he was ready to meet his death with dignity. But when the shot rang out, Streltsov was ready. He wasted no time. His hand extended, and with the machine gun in his hands, he fired the shot that ended the killer's life. The policeman stood there without any emotion, as if everything that was happening was part of his job, part of a big plan. "The threat has been eliminated," he said, checking the killer's pulse. Judge Lapshin, barely recovering from the shock, looked at Streltsov, and bewilderment flashed in his eyes. He did not understand who was standing in front of him and why this man got rid of the threat so easily. Streltsov was not on his side. He was neither a friend nor an ally. He was the one who continued to live in the shadows, who knew more than anyone who worked on the other side of the law. "Who are you?" Lapshin asked barely audibly, trying to find at least some familiar expression on his face. The policeman looked at him silently. This look was cold and clear. Streltsov said nothing, but his silence was louder than any words. Lapshin was in shock. He did not know how to react. He had just witnessed what looked like a rescue, but in fact was part of a much more dangerous game. He instinctively understood that his life would now be different. He was no longer just a judge. He had become part of something much larger. You don't need to know who I am. You need to understand that you are now a part of this world. You need to be ready, Streltsov finally said quietly, almost in a whisper. The courtroom filled with police officers, special forces, and journalists. Everyone's eyes were glued to Streltsov, but he disappeared like a shadow, leaving behind only surprise and a question. Who is he? A few minutes later, when everything had calmed down, Lapshin was left alone, with an empty chair opposite him. He was deeply shaken. He knew that this was not just a rescue, it was a trap. He was caught up in a game whose rules he did not know, and whose opponents were such that ordinary people would not have a chance. But here is what was especially strange. Lapshin heard a barely perceptible sound, as if something that was once hidden was now revealed. This was not just an accident. Everything that was happening was part of a huge scheme. Someone out there in the shadows controlled everything. And this man, Streltsov, was his representative, and perhaps even his executor. The next day, Lapshin was summoned to a secret government agency. It was a place where ordinary people did not go. There he met the one who was behind the shadow. Officer Streltsov was just the tip of the iceberg, and this man was his boss. Judge Lapshin, he said with a smile, we have been watching you for a long time. You have become too important an element for us. The time when you could remain just a judge is over. Do you want to know why? Because now you are our key. Your decisions will decide not only your fate, but the fate of the entire country. Lapshin was silent. He realized that he was trapped, from which there was no escape. And then at that moment, Streltsov appeared in the doorway again. He stood without saying a word, simply watching. The one who controlled everything that was happening looked at Lapshin and said, now you have to make a choice, Judge. Are you ready to become part of the system? Or will you fight for the truth, knowing that the truth is the most dangerous thing that can be found in this world? Lapshin remained silent. His life would change forever, but he did not know where this path would lead him. Lapshin, remaining in the shadows, did not know that he had become part of something much larger than anything he could ever imagine. He sat in an office where every shadow on the walls seemed like part of the game he was caught up in. Streltsov, standing against the foggy window, seemed not to be a man, but the personification of the shadow itself. The one who controlled everything stepped forward and gave Lapshin a look that said more than words. You don't know who we really are. You're just beginning to understand that everything you believed was a lie, and everything you've seen so far is just the beginning. Lapshin felt his heart beat faster. He realized that his life would now depend on the choice he made, and that choice would have consequences that would overshadow everything he knew. He could go with them and become part of the shadow, or try to fight and find the light in this chaos, where every step could be the last. And suddenly, a new message flashed on the screen before his eyes. A logo he knew, but couldn't believe. Shadow. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a signal that he had become a pawn in a game that had been going on for a long time, and that no one could stop. Are you ready to see the truth? Time is up. We are watching, and we never forget, a voice said from the screen. Lapshin realized that his life had changed forever. But the scariest thing was that he realized that this was not just his life. It was a game where the truth did not exist, and he was part of it. Now, no one knew what was behind the screen. What happened to the judges, prosecutors, and those who try to fight the system? Who is behind the shadow, and why can no one leave this game alive? The answers will come, but too late. Or maybe they have already come. You are not ready for what will be revealed next time. Stay with us, because you do not know who is watching you.